Thanks, Jen, for that nice introduction. As Jen mentioned, we are here today to look at some of Acumatica's 25R1 new features. While we won't be covering all of them, we will be covering quite a few that really, I think, can pertain to most of our attendees today in this webinar. For anyone who is interested in learning about every single new feature, there's about 300 pages worth of new features for 25R1. You can go to the community site and you can always download that to read the full documentation. So before I get started, Amy or Jen, if you could just confirm that you are seeing my Acumatica screen.
We are.
Yes, looks great.
All right. So I am logged into Acumatica 25R1, and we're going to be covering quite a few different features crossing different modules in Acumatica. Just to kind of give you a flavor of what we're going to be covering before we dive in, is we are going to be looking at the new modern UI that Acumatica has been talking about for the past several releases. They've been giving us some previews into the modern UI. So we're going to take a look at that, which is now available in a beta program. So if it's something you're interested in participating in, you can enroll in that beta program. It will be available to the general public in the next release, 25R2, that's going to be coming out end of September, early October. We're going to dive into some of the AI features that Acumatica now has available. Again, they're expanding AI with every release. If you attended the summit in person or you watched some of the general sessions, the recordings, they gave a glimpse into some of the AI stuff that they're actually working on for some upcoming releases. So today we'll take a look at what's there right now. And then we're going to look at some improvements that they've made in the AR module, and as well as some different improvements around things in sales orders, purchase orders. And then we're going to close out our session today with some enhancements that they made to reporting in the payroll module. So we are going to start out with taking a look at the modern UI. Again, I know everybody has really been waiting to get their hands on this, wanting to play with it as they've been getting a glimpse of this from Acumatica and some of the sessions that they've been holding historically. The modern UI has been developed to really empower users to be able to take control of their environment from a usability perspective. Okay, what I mean by that is they are giving users the ability to really change what the layout of their screen looks like without having to do any sort of coding, without having to do any publishing, which publishing takes your site down for a short period of time. The screen configurations and modifications that you can do in the modern UI can be done immediately and pushed out to your users immediately real time. So the screen that I'm going to be demonstrating some of the new modern UI functionality on today is Acumatica's sales order screen. When you have the modern UI functionality enabled in your environment, you have the ability under your settings to switch to the modern UI or switch back to the classic UI, which is what you guys are all using today. So right now, until this has been fully rolled out to all the screens and to the general public, you have the option today as to whether or not you actually want to use the modern UI in the screens that you're transacting in, or if you want to remain in the standard kind of classic mode. So I am like I said, in the new modern UI. You can see the look, the feel of the screen is a bit different than what you're used to seeing today on a sales order screen. They've really kind of streamlined how they've grouped fields together in kind of these boxes. They've used some different color coding as well to bring attention to certain things on the fields and their groupings. Okay. But I think the most exciting thing that they've done with the UI is the ability to move fields around and add fields, which I'm going to demonstrate to you today. So I'm going to come up to my little gear, which is my settings icon, where I'm going to be able to enter into the screen configuration. Okay. When I enter into the screen configuration, you can see that each of these groupings or kind of blocks also get presented with a little gear, okay, which allows me to enter into the settings for that section of the screen. So if I go into, I'm going to go into the settings section of my middle box here. And I'm going to show you how easy it is to be able to move fields around. So let's say I want my description to be right up above my contact. I can just drag and drop that description field. Okay. It's very common for customers to, want us to add fields to their screen. So if I wanted to, I can come over let me just expand my documents field and you can see some additional screens here. Okay. Here are some additional fields that I could add to this block. The one I'm actually going to add is under your user defined fields. So many of you today have user defined fields that have been added to your screen. And those user defined fields today get represented in a separate tab. You can't control where you want to place those on your screen. With the new modern UI, you can take those attributes, which have been turned into user-defined fields, and you can bring those in and place them anywhere on your screen. So this is an attribute called room that I am adding to that middle section of my screen. I'm going to come up here and I'm going to say apply. Okay. And what you're seeing now is that I moved my description field up in the list and I just added that user defined field here to the middle section of my grid. Once I'm done making all my changes, I can come and I can apply to all. And this is where it's asking me if I want to apply it to everybody. And this is a security system to be able to overwrite everybody's personal configurations, right? Or if I want to preserve personal configurations and just have this affect me in my screen. I'm going to just say overwrite, okay, which means now when anyone comes into the sales order screen, regardless of who the user is, they're going to see this updated layout to the form. Okay. Another thing that you can do in the modern UI, which I'm going to go back into my screen configurations, is down here in your tabs, okay, you actually can hide some of the tabs that you're seeing. So if you're an organization, maybe you're not using discounts or approvals or relations, right? I can pull those down into my hidden section, go ahead and apply that again, and now it cleaned up all the different tabs going across, and it's no longer showing me things that we don't use as an organization. Or maybe something that I don't do or use, me personally, I don't use those every day. I'm taking them out of my view. But if I don't overwrite everyone's personalizations, other people within the organization can still see that. So I think that's really cool. In the past, for us to be able to hide those tabs, that was controlled typically through user level security, which anyone who maintains security knows that that takes a little bit of time to hide all that information. Now you can just do it with a few clicks. In the modern UI, Acumatica has changed what we currently know as the column configurator. They took away that little icon that kind of looked like a sheet of paper, and they replaced it with this gear. And instead of having to insert columns and move them back and forth based off of if I want to see them or I don't want to see them, now it's just a simple check, right? If I don't want to see those fields, I can go ahead, unselect them, and it hides them. And it's just as easy to add them back in just by selecting them. So those are some of the changes to the UI that now you as a user can go ahead and you can make these changes yourself Again, they can be global changes to all users that have access to the screen if your security permits, or you can just make some personalized changes for yourself. So that is a form, or transaction screen that we looked at. I'm going to jump over and we're going to talk a little bit more about the modern UI in your generic inquiries. So I'm going to jump over to this sales order generic inquiry list here. All right. Within the sales order generic inquiry, you still have your functionality where you can drag and drop your columns. But again, you now have this little gear here that works just like I showed you in the column configurator, where you can easily uncheck columns you don't want to see or check columns you want to add. Also within the new modern UI for your generic inquiries, instead of seeing your saved filters displayed as tabs going across your page, all of your saved filters are now represented here in a drop down. Okay. So it just gives it just a cleaner look, easier to work with when you have lots of tabs, because as you start building out all your filters and they're represented in tabs, um, they start kind of running off the page and going into a drop down. So this just keeps it nice and uniformed here. So that's our conclusion here, of what's available in the new modern UI. Again, this is released in a controlled environment. So if you are on 25R1 or you plan on upgrading the 25R1 and you want to take part in this beta program, let us know, and we can get you moving forward in that direction so that you can start reaping the benefits of all this new functionality in the modern UI. Next, we're going to move on to talk about AI. So, everyone knows AI is the big buzzword, right? Today, doesn't matter if we're working in ERP, if we're writing documentation, or even in our personal lives, right? Just trying to learn more about a certain topic, right? AI is that powerful tool that kind of gives us shortcuts into all that information. So Acumatica has started to incorporate AI into their application going back, really a few years ago when they introduced the AP document recognition. And they've been expanding upon that ever since. And this is something that they are going to keep building out for many years to come. Currently in Acumatica, right, AI exists in the form of that AP document recognition, expense recognition. They've had the GL anomaly screen where it's trying to identify, um, transactions that are out of the norm that are flowing into the GL. And most recently, they added anomalies to generic inquiries. And that's where we're going to take a deeper dive today, is looking at how you can utilize this anomaly function, which is using AI in your everyday generic inquiries. So in a generic inquiry, I'm going to go over and navigate there. There are a handful of out-of-the-box ones that Acumatica already provides to you, some around sales margins and some costs in AP and in purchase orders. You can create your own GIs, right, and set up this anomaly detection. Basically, once you have your generic inquiry built, you're going to turn on this checkbox to detect anomalies. That enables up your anomaly detection tab, where you can then identify which field you want the system to run the analysis on. So in this AP cost anomaly detection GI, it's looking for anything that is kind of falling out of the norm when it comes to the actual cost of an item for a certain vendor. Right? Now, when you run this anomaly detection, you can run it on demand, but most people will set this up to run on a schedule. This is something that Acumatica and Cal recommends that you run after hours on a schedule, because it is, going back in time into your system, and it is doing a lot of analysis on your data for whatever the time frame is that's specified in your inquiry. to be able to come to determine if you have any anomalies within your data set. So depending on what you're analyzing, right? Some might be daily, others might be weekly or monthly. So once you have the data defined as far as what it's going to analyze, there is this detect anomalies screen. And this is the screen again that you would typically have running on a schedule. If it was on demand, right, you would select that and you would hit process, which I did on these a little while ago, and it is actually still calculating. Again, a reason why you would want this to run overnight. Okay. I do have another instance here. I am going to pop up that actually has an example of an anomaly that has been completed. So this anomaly that we're looking at here that completed is actually on a generic inquiry that's looking at inventory transactions, and it's looking for things that have been processed that are out of the norm. So once your anomaly finishes running, okay, you can look at your generic inquiry that then has some additional columns that are added to it. One that identifies the severity of an anomaly if there is one, okay? And then an area where you can go and you could input comments and mark it as reviewed so it takes it off the list. So what we're looking at here, just for example, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to filter on one of these items. Filter on this here. And I'm going to take mine, just make sure. Okay, I've got my empties filtered out. So this here is looking at this item called Con Baby 2. Okay, and you'll notice here through the anomaly severity that the majority of them, right, are all fall within the normal range. There's a couple here that were marked as a medium severity and one that's significant. Okay. And what you can see is it was evaluating the unit cost, where it found that there were many that from a unit cost kind of fell all within the same range. But if you look at the one where there's a severe anomaly, it had a unit cost of $40.34, right? So it knew that that was out of what the normal range is for this item that you're receiving in. So it's flagging that for you. Now, most people, if they have this running, they'll then have a business event triggered that will either send out an email notifying of the anomalies and listing them out, or they can show these on a dashboard so that your users can then be notified, take action, review them, add comments, and move on from there. So this is, again, an example of the system using AI where it's kind of looking at your receipt trend for inventory and where it sees inventory coming in at a cost that is outside what the typical range is. It's going ahead and it's flagging it. It's identifying those for you automatically. So, again, I mentioned there's a few that Acumatica has set up out of the box, again, related to sales and purchasing data. But if there's any other data in your system where you want the system to kind of go through and look at your patterns and identify any of those anomalies, you can do that through creating your own custom GI. So that is the conclusion of what we're going to look at today for our anomalies. And the next area that we're going to jump into is going to be on the receivable side. So in the past, when you're recording a customer payment, there was no notification that went out to your customer that a payment was received. In 25R1, Acumatica now allows you to basically enable a payment receipt to go out either automatically through you initiating it or automatically for certain payment methods. Now, I'm going to illustrate a payment method today of check that I have in here where we can take a look at the payment receipt. But I think more commonly when you're processing credit card transactions, especially if you have a card on file and they're recurring, you want to be able to have the system automatically send that credit card receipt out This new payment receipt feature can handle that for you. So in your payment receipt, under your action menu, you will find, let me go to a different one that's a prepayment. Just go to, find a payment. I'll put in my check payment method, a dollar amount. Okay. And then I will go ahead and I will release this. Once I release this, you'll notice, oh, what happened to it? It's making a liar out of me. I should be seeing my payment receipt, which I am not. But I do have a screenshot of what it looks like. Let me just copy that and bring that over here. Of course, we're in a demo and that is not working properly, but what you would expect is over here, you have your payment and you can either print or you can email your payment receipt manually. Okay. Now, also, the other way that you can automate this, let me get rid of my screenshot, is over here under receivables. Say show all. Oh, I know what my problem is. Forgive me. I was in my other environment where I was showing you that inventory anomaly. My apologies. So let me come back over here where I have this enabled real quick, and I'll take you through that. So if I come to my open payment, here's my print or email. So if I print, I can view this. You could send it in the mail if you really wanted to. Most people will go ahead and they'll email from here. So this is just showing that you did get your payment, right, in the amount that it was paid. Now, if you want this to go out automatically, you can go to your print/email AR documents, and they do have an action for the email of your payment receipts, so that you could set this up on a schedule so that all your receipts that were processed for the day, at the end of the day, they can get emailed out to your customers so they have confirmation of that receipt. Okay. The next feature that I want to show you is on a sales order, and Acumatica has added the functionality where you now can increase an authorized amount for a credit card payment without having to void and recreate that authorization. So for any of you who are, taking credit card authorizations on orders today, you may have encountered a situation where that order, the price of it has increased, and you now need to increase the amount of that authorization. With that, prior to 25R1, you had to void and re-enter, where today I'm going to show you how we can just reauthorize that transaction. So I'm going to come into my sales orders, going to create a new order really quick. Go ahead and save that. I'm going to come over to my payments and I am going to create a payment. And we're going to do a credit card payment here. I'm going to use my card that I already have saved on file, and I'm going to authorize the $500. Now, if this amount changes for whatever reason, maybe you had to add freight to this, or maybe the customer called and now you are adding some additional items to this. So you come to the details and something changes, right? That causes the amount to change. I'm just going to manually update my order to $600. When I go back to my payment, okay, I can come here and I can actually reauthorize this. Again, prior to 25R1, you are not able to reauthorize your transactions. Okay. So I can reauthorize this, make sure this processed, in the amount of $600. So that is a new feature within 25R1 to be able to go ahead and increase your authorized amount. So it's now reauthorized. It's going to finish up for $600. I'm going to create another order real quick and show you another feature that Acumatica has where you now can create payment links for prepayments on sales orders. So again, historically, if any of you guys are using Acumatica payments and you're sending out payment links to your customers and they're paying off of that payment link, historically, that would create a payment versus a prepayment. Okay. Now in the processing center, you have the ability, I go to processing centers, you have the ability to tell the system when I send out a sales order payment link, I want it to come back as a prepayment. So this will handle the payment a little bit different from an accounting perspective when you do prepayments. Add an item, add and close, save that. Pick my processing center. Oh, it's not letting me pick here. But here's when I send my payment link, it's going to get sent as a prepayment versus a payment and will come back into the system and be handled as a prepayment. Now, Acumatica, in addition to allowing you to send payment links out to your customers to have them pay for an order before it ships, Acumatica now has functionality where you actually can create what's called a prepayment invoice. The prepayment invoice can be for a percentage of the order. It could be for, the entire order. It's your choice. So you would create your order and you can now say, I want to create a prepayment invoice. So this is a document that you could actually send to your customers that they're going to pay off of. Prior to 25R1, there was no functionality for this prepayment. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to create a prepayment invoice for 50%. Here's my prepayment transaction. I can go ahead, I can print this prepayment invoice, mail it to my customer. I can email it to them. I'm going to go ahead and release this. When your customer pays, okay, you're going to pull up this prepayment invoice and you're going to pay this. They can pay by credit card, they can pay by check, whatever their preferred payment is. So here's my prepayment where we're paying this by check. I'm going to release that. And now I'm going to process my order because I have received my prepayment off of that prepayment invoice. So I'm going to use my quick process here to have it create that invoice for me. I'm going to open up my invoice. You'll notice that that prepayment that was recorded off of that prepayment invoice is applied to this order. Okay. If you look at your order totals, you'll see that 250 was paid with an unpaid balance of $250, where I can go ahead and release this and now have this invoice hit my AR ledger for $250. Okay. So again, this is really helpful for customers where you require prepayments and you want to be able to provide a document to your customer to pay off of in the amount of that prepayment. It generates that prepayment invoice document for them to pay off of. In the past, I know customers were creating like fake invoices for the amount of the prepayment just to give their customer an invoice to pay off of. And then when that came in, they would remove the invoice and apply the payment to the order. So this process really streamlines the ability to issue a document to your customer to pay off for the form of this prepayment. Okay, next we're going to talk about some functionality that Acumatica added to items that are either a lot or serial tracked, right? So in a lot of cases when you're receiving items, and a good example of this is maybe you're in the market where you buy used items. Or it could be new items and they go through an inspection process. And based off of that inspection process, you want to capture additional information about this item that you're bringing into stock. So Acumatica has added the ability to have attributes added to a lot or serial tracked item. In the lot serial track classes, you will notice that there is a new attributes tab. Under this attributes tab for your lot serial class is where you list what attributes you want to capture for items that utilize this lot or serial class. In the case of this example, we're going to capture the color of the item that we're going to be receiving in under this attribute. So I'm going to go and I'm going to create a purchase order for a computer that has this lot serial class assigned to them. And I'm going to buy one of these. And I'm going to take this off a hold. And then I'm going to quickly receive this in through a purchase order receipt. Now it's on the purchase order receipt, right, at this time, where we're capturing that additional information about this computer that we're bringing in. So my system is set up to receive the order quantity. So it's bringing in one. And if I open up my line details tab, here's where you can now see the attribute that I'm going to assign. So I would come in here and I would pick my color, assign that, and then I would release. Once that's complete, you have visibility to your items and the associated attributes. You can see this through, there's a screen called Lot Serial Track Details. And in here, you can view all of the attributes for that serial item. Where here you can see that I assigned the blue color, right, to this specific serialized item. I can change my colors if you have additional attributes. Maybe you don't have the information at the time of actual processing the receipt. You could come in at a later date and you can add those attributes. You can also upload images if you wanted to. Now you can take this data, right, that you've captured on this item and now use this when you're creating a sales order. So if I was to go now and create a sales order for this item, and I wanted to search my inventory for these computers that are of this blue color, I'm going to go create a sales order. And let me go add that item. Okay, and I'll add one of these. Right? If I go to add the last serial number, and I could have started here if I wanted to go this way, right? Here's where I can filter on an item, or if I was searching for that item, let me just populate this just to restrict that. Here's where I could then use my search if I wanted to, and I can search for a specific color. So here's that blue one that I received in. So if I have these computers in stock in blue and green and red, right? All different colors, all using the same item number, I can quickly assign which serial number I want to sell to this customer based off of that color that they're requesting that we're capturing in that attribute. So that's how you can utilize the data in those attributes that you're populating either when you're receiving or someone's going into after the fact, and then utilize that attribute data when you're selling your item. So, by utilizing attributes, you actually can reduce the number of SKUs that you have in your system. Prior to having attributes, if you had a computer, same model, but different colors, right? You may have had that item set up multiple times so it would represent that color. Where here, utilizing attribute, I can use a single item and I can tag it with the color. So that concludes the demonstration on attributes. Very, very powerful. And next, we're going to just look at a few purchasing enhancements. So I'm going to come over to my purchase order. Let's leave our screen. One thing I want to highlight here, let me go into an open PO. So I'm going to go to my completed one. There is a new side panel in here, which I think is really, really handy, where if I pop that open, this is showing me receipt lines that were received in, which is if you have multiple receipts and you're not sure which receipt something was received in on, this side panel, right, brings that to life. So here's where you can actually see the purchase receipt that item was received on. So this is a new side panel. Just want to draw your attention to, because anyone using purchasing, I think will find that new side panel very, very handy. That way you don't have to drill into the receipts to see what was received. Now I'm going to go over to me find an open PO, and I'm going to show you some new functionality on the purchase receipt where you can now correct or cancel a receipt. Now, in my mind, I think this is probably one of my favorite new features, only because we get calls on a regular basis where people are looking for help on how to fix a purchase receipt that was incorrectly processed. It could be that they brought it in at the wrong cost, or they brought it in at the wrong quantity. Um, we get those calls time and time again. And even if you know how to fix those, the way Acumatica requires you to fix it requires an AP bill to have to get created with then a credit that gets issued against it, right? It takes multiple transactions to really unwind and fix that incorrect purchase receipt that was created. This new functionality I'm going to show you streamlines all of that. So if I was to bring in this computer here, let me say it's a purchase receipt, I'm bringing this in and I'm saying, yep, I brought in one of these and I'm taking it, I'm bringing it in at the cost that was on the PO. So I'm just going to go ahead, I'm going to release this. And then later on, could be next day, could be same day, doesn't matter as long as this is still in stock. I realized that, you know what? I didn't get one, I actually got two. Okay. So again, prior to this new functionality, if you wanted to correct your receiving, right, you'd have to do a return, and then you'd have to match the original receipt to an AP bill and the return to a credit. Okay. Here, here with this new feature, you actually can go ahead and you can correct this receipt. Okay. Give me 1 second to get this queued up. Wait. And I should see a correct. Let me come back here. Give me 1 moment to find that. I should just be able to cancel. You can see I have a few queued up here. This demo environment is not cooperating once again. Well, I wish I can demonstrate that, but I am not seeing my canceled or correct button. You should see a correct button right on that receipt. Let me pull that up one more time here. Let me just pull up one of these. Yeah, you should see, and you will see, I'm not sure what happened to this demo environment that I had set up, but you would see a correct button that basically reverses out your receipt, or a cancel button, which cancels and puts you back to the position that you were in, the correct, lets you actually put in the right quantity and the right dollar amount. So my apologies, I'm not sure what happened to the setting here that allows me to do that, but you should see a correct or a cancel under your processing to process that. This was one of my favorite features, so I'm not sure why I'm not seeing that enabled in here right now. All right, so we're going to move over to our payroll. And we had quite a few customers last year that went live with payroll, more than we've seen historically. So Acumatica payroll is actually becoming very, very popular. And one of the things that Acumatica has been enhancing every release is they've been enhancing their PTO functionality. And they continue to do that with 25R1, where they're enhancing how PTO is calculated. So I'm going to navigate over to my PTO bank. And I'm going to open up this PTO bank for sick time. And what Acumatica has added in this release is the ability to specify the different types of earning codes that your sick time is calculated on. Prior to this release, your PTO for sick time would be calculated on all your wages, right, for that pay period, where now you can specify which earnings types or which wages your sick time will accrue on. So again, just giving you more control over how PTO time gets calculated. There's also been several new payroll reports that have been added. One being the payroll summary. Let me back up my dates here. So I'm going to run a payroll summary for 2024. In the past, you'd have to run different reports, right? That would give you your earnings and your benefits, deductions. These were all separate reports that you'd have to put together and run individually. This payroll summary report basically pulls all that payroll information for those different buckets into a single report. So this was something that many, many customers have asked for, and I think are going to be very excited to see this report get added to the payroll module. Another report that has gotten added is called, as part of your annual reports that you would run, and it is your taxes by code. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to run this report. Well, let me just change my period again to 24. And I'm going to run it twice. I'm going to run it the first time, where this is just going to basically summarize all of my taxes for the year. Okay. And then I can look at all my taxes then by employee again for the year. So I can see which employees the taxes were calculated on. So again, another report where, users were struggling a little bit trying to get this information, and this report solves that issue. And then for those of you who don't have a modified um, pay stub, I just want to note in conclusion as we wrap up that Acumatica has a new default detailed pay stub report with more details on it than it had before. All your taxes, all your PTO, all your benefits, broken out into a lot more detail than historically what was showing on your payroll reports. So again, you'll get that if you don't have a modified report. If you do, we will have to basically start with Acumatica's revised pay stub report, and then we could modify anything that you want from there. So just keep that in mind. If you're running payroll and you want to take a look at that new detailed pay stub, let us know and we can make sure that we get that new report in place for you. So that is a wrap on the new features here in Acumatica. Again, crossing the modern UI, new AI functionality. We covered some enhancements on being able to increase your authorized amount on credit cards, prepayment invoices, which is big. We have a lot of customers that can utilize that. So if you're requiring prepayments today and you want to be able to issue your customer a prepayment, an actual invoice to pay off of, let us know. We can help you get that configured. We also talked about the lot serial attributes. Again, another great feature that allows you to collect more information on items that you're receiving in. I do think that that will help reduce number of items that you may need to be managing in your system because you can collect that additional data at an attribute level. Um, on the purchase receipts, the correcting of the PO. I apologize that did not work in this demo environment. It did work earlier, but that having that configured again will save your users so much time being able to correct purchase receipts that were put in incorrectly. And then lastly, we have our payroll reports and additions to our PTO banks. So those are our highlights here at Cal for 25R1 new features. As I mentioned before, if you go to Acumatica and you are a community member, I'm going to log in real quick. Under your products, you can navigate to 25R1 where you can go ahead and you can download the full release notes to 25R1, where it will outline everything that is included in this great release. So thank you for joining, and that concludes our demonstration of 25R1 new features.